Welcome back to the Hip Hop Report. This is Ramble Hustle, and today we're reviewing ICEMAN by Drake, one of the most anticipated albums of the year. Now, for me, honestly, and I know a lot of people think that I hate Drake, and it's not so much that I hate Drake, is that I feel like Drake came in as one person and then he evolved into another person. And that's not to say that artists can't change or evolve, because obviously they can, but I also think that there is a certain level of authenticity and care that evolution should come with, right? An artist should not become more street or more hood. It just seems inauthentic. And because we know so much about you early on from Comeback Season and So Far Gone, it's like we just don't believe this. It's like you went and worked with certain artists that you admired coming up as a fan of hip hop, right? Because from our understanding, he didn't grow up in a hip hop environment. He just consumed it on the TV, MTV Yo Raps, and actually created this character that, as Glasses Malone's put it, this is just what Drake thinks hip hop represents. And because of that, I think he lacks the authenticity, even though emotionally he is transparent, he is honest in his music. When it comes to his visual representation, his image, his branding, I feel like he's gone into this entirely different direction that's led him from this to this. For me to even get to the music, I had to sidestep his goofy behavior, his corny takes, you name it. There's a whole list of things that Drake does that makes me feel like his character isn't even worth the time to consume his music, and eventually has turned me into not a Drake hater necessarily, but just somebody who doesn't support him because the lack of authenticity. Now, what we wanted from this album, which I think is important to detail, is the idea that he would address the beef in a personal, transparent issue. He would take accountability for his actions, and then also take heed to the fact that he did, in fact, actually lose the battle to Kendrick. I'm not sure if this album really plays out as him wanting a round two, because I don't think that's what he wants. And personally, I wouldn't either after the beating he took. And even listening to the album, he does seem to take accountability and create some self-awareness, even stating in multiple records that his music does have to grow up and it does have to evolve. And even towards the end of the project, he even says Muggsy Bogues caught a win. And even though Kendrick won, but you're comparing him to Muggsy Bogues, which honestly, if you guys don't know who Muggsy Bogues is, he is the shortest player to ever play in the NBA. So again, you're taking a high school girl level shot at somebody who is one of the greatest lyricists of all time in hip hop. And I think that's our issue with the Drake hive, essentially, is the fact that you feel like you have to shit on and downplay other artists' greatness in hip hop history to champion and uplift your artist. Incapable of complimenting Kendrick or anyone else that's on that side, and also saying, but I prefer Drake better. And that's probably what makes you goofies goofy. The fact that you don't understand what hip hop is supposed to sound like, what hip hop is supposed to be about, and you don't understand that it comes from struggle. Primarily because most of you are privileged and come from a lack of struggle. And what happens is that when you are privileged and you lack struggle, then you yearn for struggle, because then you can finally say, look what I overcame. With that, we have ICEMAN, Drake's brand new, highly anticipated album that took about 2 years for him to hype up and roll out and actually release to you guys. And we have him overcoming a struggle that he's never had to face before, because as far as I know, as far as the history that we know of Drake, it's been all easy rider for him. I mean, the kid was a TV star by middle school, and then by high school, he was already messing with music, and then he got discovered by both Trey Songz and ultimately Lil Wayne. Now, that's what's weird about me when I hear him talk so much in these records about, oh, I helped all these people out and I helped. You know, those features were just business transactions. And you figured that with your experience in the industry, you would just be more familiar with the idea of these are just business relationships. These are not friendships. These are just you benefit and I benefit. And I think that's very much the case. Any feature he ever did with Rick Ross or whoever the case is was a feature that they benefited because they got access to his audience, which is generally more of a white audience, a suburban audience, an audience that wanted a rapper, but they wanted a rapper that felt safe, a rapper that felt universal, a rapper that felt consumable without feeling threatened that they were, promoting violence, or they just wanted a guy that was safe. And Drake was safe. He wore sweaters. He dressed like this. And that's our biggest question. How do you go from this to this? But like I said, all of those features were essentially business transactions. And only Drake was the one thinking that he was creating lifelong friendships with these people. Now, with all of that being said, after 2 years of the beef, after Kendrick basically tweeting 5 times and destroying this guy's character publicly, besides obviously for his diehard fans that no matter what he does, whether that's fondling a 17-year-old on stage or text messaging underage girls until they turn old enough for him to be able to ask them to take him out on dates, and then he takes them out on dates publicly, which is insane. It doesn't matter what the guy does, selfies, the duck lips, it doesn't matter what the guy does. You guys excuse it because he's got good melodies and because his "I used to be lame, but now I got money and now I got fame" trajectory is something that you strive for. That gives you hope. That gives you hope that you don't have to be lame forever and that one day maybe you could be successful just like Drake. Now, with that being said, we start with Make 'Em Cry, which, to be honest with you, is one of my favorite records and a record that I think showcases promise. It's kind of a pump fake though, because most of ICEMAN is not in the realm of Make 'Em Cry. It's more in the realm of what Drake likes to do, and that's the tough guy talk, or the mob ties talk, and talking like you got hits or you're in the streets with anybody. Now, if you're in the streets now, it's because you're choosing to be in the streets because you yearn for the validation of the streets, which is why when you could have gone pop, you didn't, and you stayed going back to the streets to see what those were about, because God knows you didn't have any experience in that. So, with Make 'Em Cry, I think we do get a good glimpse at the sound that Drake has always been able to do. The sound, the hip hop sound that allows us to hear the sample and is musically dynamic, but also open enough for him to express himself transparently and give us information about what he's got going on emotionally and what he wants to say without feeling contrived, without feeling forced, without feeling like he's trying to be this really hard, tough guy, which is what we get when we get records that are more on the trap, instrumentals, and just harder beats that just seem a little bit too heavy for Drake, if you ask me. Even though this record starts off strong and starts off in the way that, not the way that I would want, but in the way that Drake needs to start off his album to allow us to say, okay, maybe we are getting, a more mature, a more grown up, a more transparent Drake than what we've gotten in the last 8 years. Unfortunately, that streak pretty much dies out as soon as we get into Dust, followed by Whispers My Name, which, by the way, nobody's ever whispered your name, Drake. Rick Ross says your name out loud. Kendrick said your name at the Super Bowl in the largest stage on earth. You are not someone that anyone fears on any capacity. You had beef with Common came at you. Nobody's ever whispered Drake's name in fear, ever. This has never happened. So for me, as much as I love the sound and the sonic soundscape of what Whisper My Name had, it's just anytime you tap into this tough guy role, it X's the record out for me. It becomes void because I don't believe it. Now, if you wrote that for someone else and you sold that record, then that would sound great. But for me, Drake, you just don't have that in you. We get Janice Shut the Fuck Up, which I assume Janice is just another way of saying Karen, or I'm not really sure what he's going with this. I know that Timbaland praised this record quite a bit, but for me, I don't know. It's like he couldn't figure out how to become the man, so then he just told 40 to deepen his voice, and he thought that would sell us on it. And I know that everyone's loving this record and the catchiness, whatever, but again, anytime you go Grease, I'm gonna see you as John Travolta, unfortunately. So that one's a skip for me also, just because it's cringy as fuck. And then of course Ran to Atlanta, which honestly I can't even put in any kind of list or playlist, because to me this just proves Kendrick. It proves that he's 100% right. And I guess my biggest question with this record is, why didn't Future get the same treatment that everyone else did when he was literally the #1 conspirator to put Metro Boomin and Kendrick on that record where he dissed you. I mean, the entire beef stems off this record that was on Future's album. So why exactly does Future get a pass? It's very intriguing to me. I had never really understood it. But I suppose if I had to land on something, I would say that Future is not your friend either. And because he is a capitalist artist at heart, and you guys probably connect, you know, because you probably had an ex-absentee father and he's an absentee father. So it kind of makes sense that you guys are on this record together, but I constantly question how you gave him a pass. Although I will say this is probably the worst collaboration that you and Future have ever made together. And so that should take into account. But of course, we also have 21 Savage on this album, which also proves that you're just so committed to being ratchet and from Atlanta that you don't realize that you're not ratchet and you're not from Atlanta. And it doesn't matter how many sexy red features you put on your album. Both of them were terrible, by the way. And we're not tapping into those albums because honestly, those albums aren't hip hop. But how do you mess up that cheetah print sample? I mean, that's literally a layup. Now, we hit a really good streak of records after Run to Atlanta with Shabang, which I think is the kind of record that is both catchy, simplistic, and also Drake is able to kind of be more playful and lighthearted. This is where I think Drake really shines because he's able to not feel like he's being too serious, and then we can take that more seriously. We don't like this tough guy Drake that is running around trying to sell us on the fact that he's from some block or he runs some street or he's got some kind of hitters. No. Shabang is perfect because Shabang is cool, it's lighthearted, it's fun. You seem like you're having a great time. The flow is chill. And I don't feel like you're trying to sell me with a deeper voice or a more aggressive delivery or any of that. This is just simple old corny Drake just being creative and being dynamic with his deliveries, flows, and melodies. This is the Drake that we've all come to like and maybe not love, but at least appreciate for what it is. Now, Make Them Pay and Burning Bridges, I think both stand the test of time, with Make Them Pay definitely being at the height of that. I know a lot of people were really pushing this record and really making this record like a top tier, exciting push as far as like what they liked on the record. And I think, again, Make Them Pay, Make Them Cry, and Make Them Remember are three of the top records on this project because they allow Drake to be honest, to rap his ass off, but also not be forceful, to not be an actor, to not try to convince us that he is this thing that we just know he's not. Unlike Burning Bridges or National Treasure or Bees on the Table with 21 Savage, which again, it's just him trying to play this character that personally, at least me, I'm not a Drake stan, I'm not this like diehard fan. You're trying to sell me something that I can visibly see isn't in you. It's just this thing that you can portray because you have the money to carry this facade. You know, and all of these are followed by What Did I Miss? The Lack of Accountability Anthem. For me, this record, even at the time that it came in, was so cringe because we all knew what happened. And then you trying to downplay it and act like you didn't know what would happen and you're just so oblivious to the situation and what's going on. And then on top of that, but what I don't understand is that you've been rapping about the industry and fake friends for about 15 years, 10 years, however long you've been in the game. And somehow you were shocked by the fact that these people weren't your real friends. I mean, after all, you say you wouldn't take the dinner with Jay-Z, but Jay-Z's been giving you advice for 10 years. That's a whole decade of one of the top artists in the game ever, in history of hip hop, being on your side and saying like, hey man, this is gonna happen. You remember Pound Cake? He gave you the advice. He told you what was going to happen, and somehow it happened and you're still shocked. But at the same time, it didn't happen because it had to. You have to remember that when you came out and you were corny, cheesy, talented Drake, we accepted you. Everyone welcomed you into the game. Well, not everyone, but we welcomed you into the game, and somehow you still played with that. You said, you know, whatever. But when you switch up your entire demeanor, your image, like when you become somebody else, then you give us the ability, or you allow us the leverage to also switch up. Because if you're gonna switch up, then we have to recalibrate who we think you are and whether that aligns with who we want to be associated with when it comes to you. Now, plot twist, again, it's just a record that's been recycled 100 times by Drake, the same flow, the same beat, but at least it's followed by Too Hard for the Radio, which honestly, Drake has never been too hard for anything, which is my primary issue. Now, this to me is a knockoff of Squabble Up, and it's weird that you would try to question who had the slaps when you know who had the slaps. And to act like you're like this narcissistic mindset that you're the only one able to bring in hits for hip hop is insane. What's even worse is that your fan base actually believes that when you see that. When there's literally artists releasing music, y'all just don't appreciate hip hop. You don't appreciate anything that's not you. And that's really what frustrates us the most, because you can't tell me I'm just a Kendrick fan. I'm a hip hop fan. But whenever we look at your fan base and these goofy people online all arguing all day, all night about why you're the greatest and no one else matters, we have no choice but to block that out. We can't even take you seriously. It's clown shit behavior. And it only happens because you infiltrate these people's minds to think, oh, well, you love me, so you must not love anything else. The same reason why you're dirty macking on your homies and then your peers' girls and video girls and girlfriends. I mean, even the guy that co-signed for you to get your big break, Lil Wayne, even you smashed his girl while he was in jail. We're just giving you mercy and talking about the music, because if we had to talk about you and your personality and your character, we just wouldn't cover it at all. We wouldn't even listen to the shit, because at the end of the day, we don't respect you like that. Now, Too Hard for Radio, again, is just an embarrassing attempt at making West Coast music without a West Coast feature. Now, in the past, you had Game at least co-signing these things with you. I don't know why you put him on there. I mean, he was riding your dick the last month and a half, so why not just slap him on Too Hard for Radio, and at least like that, you have a West Coast record with a West Coast co-sign, and it makes some kind of sense. But at least after this, we get Make Them Remember, which I do appreciate, because again, we revisit that sound that we actually appreciate and love from Drake, where he's able to be transparent on a record that makes sense. This is you. This is who you are. Regardless of what other records you make or what other kind of imagery or sounds you try to sell us on, this is what your brand of sonic delivery is traditionally. And anything outside of that, I think, is really hard. I mean, obviously, besides the R&B stuff, which that's your bet. Now, this is followed by Little Birdie, which I think is terrible. Don't Worry and Firm Friends. I think Don't Worry is dope. I don't think it's super strong like the record, but it's one of those things where that monotone singing tone that you like to lean on, I think it works, and I think the melodies are catchy, and I think what you're talking about is very much reality to now. It's true to you and where you're at today and your position in the game, so it doesn't seem inauthentic. While Firm Friends seems like a great place to end this project, because this at least allows us to feel like you're addressing people that did hold you down, that did stay true, that did hold, like, you know, like keep supporting you, you know, like your Steph Currys, etc. It's a good record because it allows you not to sound bitter on the entire project. And of course, finishing up with Make Them Know, which a lot of people have praised. Again, not one of my favorite records, but it is a strong finish, even though I think you could have finished with Firm Friends. But nonetheless, you know, I have about 4 or 5 records that I enjoyed off the record and I really felt like were essential to what Drake needed to say. Now, of course, I do feel like the other 2 albums were fluff, just to distract people and to flood, and obviously feeding your fans what they want. But, you know, as far as hip hop and the legacy that you're leaving behind, I do feel like those 2 albums will ultimately be you playing the LeBron role of trying to hit every record, even though you know you're not gonna get a ring. And just remember that Drake did not make hip hop cool. Hip hop made Drake cool.
If you want the latest and greatest, do it for the game. Subscribe to the channel.